welcome into another episode of Morgan's Pop Talks, breaking down the latest in reality TV and pop culture. On the docket today, we have Love is Blind, episodes 6 through 9. My thoughts on Jesse, West, and Sierra on Summer House. What else? We have a Toxic Mom group update. So much to get into today. But I don't know about you. There's some things in my life that is just keeping me from really being able to put my head down, focus, and work. And that's the fact that every time I open my Instagram, I see Punch the monkey with his stuffed animal. And it's really starting to get to me. Like I said, I'm not able to focus on my work. If you were to look at my search page, my For You page, you would see 25 videos of a monkey carrying around a stuffed animal, an emotional support stuffed animal. And I've cried more times than I would like to admit watching these videos of Punch on the internet. Also, I showed it to David and he's like, I don't like this. I don't like this one bit. Punch, I know he was abandoned. I think he was abandoned by his mother, but Punch should be out in the wild, living a good life. And I don't know, I just have so many complex feelings about it. Can't you see? It's taking up all my brain power at the moment. I can't think about anything else. By the time you're listening to this, Survivor 50 will have came out, and I woke up today like a kid on Christmas. I cannot wait to see Christian Hubicki. I cannot wait to see Mike White. I cannot wait to see... Who else? Sorry, I'm going through the list. Maybe some of my favorites aren't at the top of my list. I don't know. You guys, I'm excited to see Jeff Probst in all his glory, okay? Maybe we'll talk about season 50 on the Patreon. You guys pick the content on the Patreon, so let me know in the comment section. But let's go ahead and dive into this week's Pop 3. Just going to warn you, we have 2 heavy stories at the top, and then in the third one, we were able to, let loose a little bit, but the news never sleeps, so let's get into the Pop 3. Savannah Guthrie is promising a $1 million reward for the return of her mother, Nancy Guthrie. I think it's been upward of 24, 25 days since Nancy Guthrie has gone missing in the middle of the night from her house in Arizona. And, as this story has progressed over the past 3 weeks, Savannah and her siblings have come onto social media to plead with whoever may have her mother, the public, anybody that can help them get any information. So Savannah shared a new video this week offering a $1 million reward, even just for information to lead to Nancy's recovery. This is what she says. Every hour and minute and second has been agony. She was urging supporters to keep praying without ceasing as they still believe in a miracle. I'm not even done with the quotes and I already just can't. My heart can't take it. She acknowledges in the video that her mother may already be gone. She said, the family needs answers and is begging you to please come forward now. As I just said, her disappearance was on February 1st and authorities later declared the case a crime. The FBI previously raised its reward to $200,000. In earlier messages, Savannah Guthrie appealed directly to the suspected abductor, saying it's never too late to do the right thing. We believe in the essential goodness of every human being. Does this not just absolutely break your heart? The fact that there are no leads, the fact that we are 24, 25 days into this now, and there are no leads whatsoever is so gut-wrenching. I did see TMZ posted last week that they were going to stop publicizing the ransom letters that they kept getting because, again, these ransom letters, emails, whatever, kept coming into TMZ. Harvey Levin would get on TMZ Live and he would read them, or he wouldn't read them word for word, but he would say, hey, we got another ransom note. Deadlines are approaching, what have you. They're like, we're not going to do that anymore. It is a scene out of a horror film, out of a bad movie. And my heart is so heavy for Savannah and her family. The sheriff did come out and say that they're not looking at family members anymore, which I know a lot of online sleuths were looking at the family because the last place that Nancy was at Savannah's sister's house. And early on, there was some speculation about the brother-in-law, but that seemingly has been shut down. It's so sad. And, as the days continue to go on, so does the idea and the fear that we really might not find out what happened to Nancy, and I don't think there's anything worse than not knowing. I mean, as Savannah said, she's in agony, and I can't imagine. So as Savannah said, keep praying for her and their family. And of course, we'll keep you updated if anything else happens. Nick Reiner pleads not guilty in Rob and Michele Reiner murdered. So we've been following this story. It's been progressing, rather slowly. It's been 3 months, right, since Nick was arrested following Rob and Michele's deaths. This week's arraignment was his 3rd appearance in court since his parents' death last year, and he pled not guilty. He faces 2 counts of murder with a possible death penalty or life without parole, though District Attorney Nathan Hochman said his office is still deciding whether to seek execution. Hochman also said that after Reiner's arrest, prosecutors met with his siblings, Jake, Romy, and Tracy, to understand their stance on whether or not they think their brother should face the death penalty. And according to sources, the family, who, by the way, previously had Nick Reiner under a court-approved conservatorship, made it clear that they do not want to go down that road. Hochman called the killing shocking and tragic and said, "We owe it to their memory to pursue justice and accountability for the lives that were taken." So that's the latest development, but it has been a wild ride to get us to this moment. Of course, we know Nick Reiner was once going to be represented by Alan Jackson. He abruptly left the case while giving this very grand public statement on the courthouse steps about how Nick Reiner is not guilty and that he had to step down due to things out of his control, that behind the scenes, his team was still going to do what they could to support Nick. Nick is now represented by public defender Kimberly Green and is being held without bail. A preliminary hearing may be delayed due to the volume of evidence. Nick Reiner, he's 32 years old. He has battled long-time addiction and mental health issues. So when you have a not guilty plea for someone like Nick Reiner, knowing the history of his issues, you might be able to put 2 and 2 together about what the defense may be when it comes to him. And, just seeing him in the courtroom again, he has like a sinister vibe about him. And at one point he's like looking down and he has a little smirk. And, it's like, it just makes the hairs on your arm stand up, honestly. We're going to do a hard pivot because those 2 stories at the top, I know, it was a lot. Let's talk about Hilary Duff, okay? Let's talk about Hilary Duff. She's speaking out about the toxic mom group drama. Of course, you guys remember this was all the rage, all the buzz earlier this year when Ashley Tisdale did an interview with The Cut where she talks about this toxic mom group and how she was constantly left out of things and she's breaking up with the toxic mom group and whatever. And the internet had a heyday because everybody knew that Ashley Tisdale was talking about this very public, they were always posting in things, mom group between Hilary Duff, Ashley Tisdale, Manny Moore, Meghan Trainor. So here's what Hilary Duff said about it when she was on Call Her Daddy this week. "I felt really sad. I honestly felt really sad. I was pretty taken aback and I just felt sad." She says, "I have my core group of friends who have been my ride or dies for 20 years. And I have tons of different groups of mom friends because I have 4 kids." She says, "It sucks to read something that's not true, and it sucks on behalf of 6 women and all of their lives." So what does Hilary Duff think about her husband, Matthew Coma, entering the toxic mom group drama? The internet had a lot of thoughts about that, but here's what Hilary said. "Honestly, everything he does makes me laugh. So I was like, oh my God. But I also don't censor him, and I don't tell him what he can and can't post. He is so fierce for me, and I love him for that." just to jog your memory, this is what he said on his social medias about Ashley Tisdale. When you're the most self-obsessed, tone-deaf person on earth, other moms tend to shift focus to their actual toddlers. Then the sub-headline read, a mom group tell all through a father's eyes. Then he said, read my new interview with At The Cut. Okay, so he was coming hard for Ashley Tisdale, making this such a huge public thing. And that was my stance all along. You know, the internet kind of had a heyday with Matthew Coma entering the chat. Some people were like, oh, yes, like he's riding hard for his wife. He's not having it. That was my perspective, to be completely honest with you. And then on the flip side of the coin, a lot of people were like, men should not get involved in women's business. That's not a man, by the way. I got tons of DMs that said, that's not a man, by the way. That's not how a man acts. After, you know, the initial posting of that, my honest opinion is that the only opinion that really matters is Hilary's. If Hilary is okay with him posting that, then, you know, it is what it is. And I think that that's what she's saying here. She says, I don't censor him. I don't tell him what he can and can't post. And he is so fierce for me. And I love him for that. So it seemed like she was okay with it. Hilary also said, I think it came at like the craziest time. The timing felt not great and I felt used. All right, now let's get into the deep dive. We have to talk about the biggest moments from Love is Blind Ohio, episodes 6 through 9. I'm going to go through couple by couple, so let's get into it. We have to start with Chris and Jess. At this particular moment in time, is anybody talking about anyone but Chris and Jess? The answer is no. Wow, maybe one of the worst moments in Love is Blind history. When Chris breaks up, and he says he doesn't, he did, with Jess because she doesn't do Pilates every day, because she doesn't work out. Something he knew in the pods, but decided to overlook it. And, you know, I've seen all the edits. I've seen the edits of Chris really gassing Jess up before this moment, saying, oh, I'm so attracted to you. You're the best thing ever. And, you know, and she's like, oh, I thought you would judge me because I want you to sit and order pizza with me. And he's like, oh, no, you're the best. You're the best. And now, look at us. And also, it just really amazes me how short-sighted people can be when they're saying these things on an internationally televised show. Chris, let's back up, start at the beginning. He tells Jess essentially that she's not his type physically. He's not into it when they are doing it because he typically dates women that go to Pilates every day or does CrossFit. And Jess is just sitting there and she's taking it all in. And I'm not saying that she should have, but she did a fantastic job because I would have been like, right now, the image that's coming to my mind is, you know, those cartoons, I can't remember what it's called specifically, where their like head explodes. That would have been me. But anyways, he's also articulating the fact that he's been having second thoughts about his number 2, which is Breezy. He's like, I don't know if my number 2 would have been like better fit for me. All that said, Jess, I still want to try with you. And we're like, huh? What? And I don't think he wanted to try. I don't think he really wanted to try. I just think that he didn't want to dump her and look like the bad guy. News flash. You still look like the bad guy. Like, you've left her no choice. No self-respecting woman would stay in this relationship after everything that Chris just said to her on camera. So what really ticked me off, like, let's be honest, that ticked me off a lot. But what really ticked me off is the bar scene. You can't, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see that I'm rolling my eyes, but when Chris goes and talks to Ashley and Breezy and Priyanka about it, the whole group is making the conversation something that it was not. At least the edit made it seem like none of these things were factors in this conversation because Breezy's like, I get it. Look, I get it. It's about discipline. It's about the routine. He never said it was about discipline or the routine. He said he was not into their intimacy because he said, look, I know when I get to be 90 years old, everybody's going to look different, but I'm not 90 and I want to enjoy my sex life from now until I'm 90 years old. And then he goes on to say things like it was the worst. So no, Breezy, it's not about routine. Quit like giving this guy the pat on the back that you think he needs. They turned it into something that it really was not. And like I said, I do want to talk about Jessica because I think she handled herself with such poise, such grace, such class. And I love what Jessica has said about the situation in interviews since. She told Glamour, I essentially just took the information, had a mental funeral for Chris, and went about my day. In that moment, I knew there was no way this man was going to be in my life, and I knew that it was up to me to handle that in such a way that I would be proud of when I had to watch it a year later. I am extremely happy with how I handled myself, which I would go out on a limb to say I bet Chris could not say the same thing about the things he said on international television. She said, of course, I'm human. I wanted to freak out and do all the things that we would want to do, but also I didn't think he deserved any of that energy of mine, period. Period. So what does Chris have to say about it? He told Entertainment Weekly, I respect Jessica so much still, and she is such an amazing person, where I felt like I didn't want to make anything up. I felt like maybe just being super direct and honest about how I felt was the best route at the time, and just explaining what I'm normally attracted to physically without. Because I mean, on the show, we're meeting someone based on an emotional connection. So we're doing it pretty much backwards than the normal dating life. Right. Which if someone going to Pilates every day was so important to you, your first mistake was going on Love is Blind. Your second mistake was when she told you these things in the pods to still get engaged to her. And you know what he said? Didn't he say in the episode, well, she told me that she was a dancer for 15 years, so I had preconceived notions about what her body looked like in my mind. Even the sentence coming out of my mouth just gives me I just feel icky and slimy and it's gross. And as for Breezy, she entertained that conversation way too long for my liking. I feel like she was almost waiting for that because remember, she brought it up in Mexico where she was like, I don't understand why everybody's just taking shots when we've had this deep emotional connection. Essentially, I want Chris to come pine for me or something. She got what she wanted in a different setting. But I feel like she should have stood up for her man more than she did. Here you have Chris calling your husband submissive, and she's just sipping on her gold continuity cup. I really want to know how Connor really feels about that conversation between Breezy and Chris, because everything that I've seen in interviews is very brief and vague, and it more so has to do with Chris. This is what he said to Us Weekly about no longer talking to Chris. He says, I was surprised at the way he tried to do it, but it is what it is. We don't really talk anymore, as you can imagine. Okay, I want to know what you thought of Breezy's reaction to Chris calling you submissive on camera. And then this is what Bree said. It was not only disrespectful toward Jess, but also Connor. They were my best friends in the pod, and to see him flip a switch like that, it was crazy. Which, why didn't you say that in the moment? Unless maybe she did and it got taken out in the edit, because that energy from Brie is not the energy that I saw during that conversation. You feel me? Next up in the dumpster fire is Ashley and Alex. I am very confused by Alex. I feel like, we've been watching 9 episodes now of Love is Blind, and I don't know anything about Alex, like truly deeply, other than the fact that he switched jobs a lot and is a nomad. Like, that's the only things that we actually know about him, right? Like, who is this man? What does he do? Where does he live? What's his family like? What is he passionate about? What does his, past relationships look like? Which Ashley kind of grills him in this episode drop. And still, we don't really get any solid, concrete answers. And I do believe that that is going to continue to bubble up in their relationship because there's seemingly never any answers coming from Alex that make any sense, right? And Ashley's dad sniffed it out. Ashley's dad grills Alex when they meet and then says in an interview, I don't think honesty is Alex's strong suit. Clock it, Dad. Here's what Alex said about the convo with Ashley's dad. That was a wild conversation for me. He says, in my past, I've obviously met my girlfriend's parents. They've always been, hey, welcome to the family, while still obviously a bit reticent or hesitant. They wanted to see who I was as a person and give me that opportunity to show that. He says, this one, I didn't feel like it was there. There was a number of moments that felt potentially premeditated against me. I don't think I would go that far that it was premeditated against you. Ashley's dad is a divorce attorney. So the man knows how to get in there and ask the questions. I mean, not only was that rough, they got in a fight about the water bottles, about putting the water bottles back. Who cares, truly? Alex got mad that Ashley moved a water bottle. I'm gonna need more information about that fight. And then, we get this other really awkward, uncomfortable moment where Ashley told Alex that she was sexually frustrated due to their lack of physical intimacy. Alex said, well, we weren't having sex because she hadn't communicated her desires and also because he was, quote, being aware of her period. Then they start talking about tracking her cycle so that she doesn't get pregnant. And, she's like, you can still touch me on my period. I can't get pregnant on my period, which is not true, by the way. But also, do people know that there are multiple ways to not get pregnant? It's really not that hard to not get pregnant. It's not that hard to not have a baby. But anyways, let me also just say this. If a guy that I had known for 2 weeks starts talking to me about tracking my cycle, I would go to the refrigerator. I would open the door. I would take one of those water bottles out. I would slug it right across the back of his head. And then I would put it in the opposite side of the refrigerator that he wanted me to. That's just what I would do, personally. Brittany and Devontae, I said it last week, and I mean it. Wrap it up. What are we still doing here, honestly? This is no shade, This is no shade to either of them, but they're both probably lovely people. They're not compatible. They're not compatible. I'm actually wondering, how did they get to the point where they thought they were compatible enough to get engaged in the pods? Devontae just wants to be left alone, and Brittany wants love and affection. And I don't know anything else about them. Do you? Think about it. And I do give Devontae some leniency here because he did have a traumatic life experience in the pods. And it's like, do you want that moment to change the trajectory of potentially finding your future wife? No, but I think we've gotten to the point where we can all agree that Brittany is probably not Devontae's future wife. So why are we still going through, like, Brittany? I feel bad. I feel like she's always sad, and I don't want her to be sad. You see her gorgeous smile. We need to be seeing that more often, and I just don't see Devontae bringing that out in her. Let's talk about Emma and Mike. The awkwardest conversation about kids, and a lot of people are online coming for Emma's sister, who essentially said, I have kids. It's really hard. If I could go back and do my life over again, I don't think I would have kids. Which, like, yikes, number one. And everybody's saying it. Let's hope the kids don't see that one day. They will. I don't love that it came out that way. But hot take, and I know it's partially because of the edit, I think Mike needs to cool it with the kids' talk. I actually think he should break up with Emma. Instead of putting all of this pressure on her to decide in 2 weeks' time if she wants to change her mind on something that she has thought for 27 years in not having kids. Like, let's be for real, because this question alone is what Emma and Mike's relationship seemingly hinges on. Emma has said, I have for 27 years not wanted to have kids. Mike has said it's a non-negotiable for me. I know that if I got married and didn't end up having kids, I don't know how the rest of our relationship would play out. Emma has reasons for her stance of not wanting kids. You know, one, she was adopted. Two, she had how many surgeries as a kid to remove these birthmarks? And she says, because of both of those things, I don't know my parents. I don't know if these things will be passed down to my children. I had a great childhood, but I also went through a lot of trauma. I think they're all valid worries and concerns. But this fact has not changed since the beginning. And I think what's going to happen is they're not going to end up getting married. And even if it's unintentional, it's going to be framed as it's Emma's fault that we're not getting married because she still doesn't want kids. You get what I'm saying? I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's fair to put that on her shoulders. And I think it's really Mike's fault for not listening to her. Hot take? Hot take. Saving the best for last, two couples to go, Jordan and Amber. I told you I'm obsessed. And 3 episodes later, I'm still obsessed. What do you want me to say? What do you want me to say? Amber is the light in the darkness on this particular season of Love is Blind. I was obsessed when I saw Jordan making the cookies. I was obsessed when I saw Amber striking a pose. And here I am, standing 10 toes down for Jordan and Amber. In this episode, we get Amber clocking Chris because no one else will. She walks up to Chris and she says, "You think you're going to find yourself another hot doctor? Psych!" And then she flips her hair again and struts her stuff right back to the girls to give them the low down. She also says this to the girls: "He's too short to be this cocky. Get him again, Amber. Whack him one more time again, Amber. Please." Please. I don't know what I'll do if they don't get married, honestly. You might have to come check on me because I will be unwell. Vic and Christine. Justice for Vic and Christine because they didn't even get an apartment together. First, you're not going to send them on the trip to Mexico. Then they're not going to get an apartment together. And, they are both religious, so maybe they didn't want to do that. But, let us know that's not the case. It's all about the budget, which is so cheap of Love is Blind because the Vic and Christine erasure really rubs me the wrong way. Isn't it a crazy idea that some of us want to watch Love is Blind to, I don't know, watch love? Crazy thought. They're shooting their own content on their phones when going to Christine's hometown. What is with the Vic and Christine erasure? It all comes down to the budget. This is what creator Chris Colin told Entertainment Weekly. Part of the reason that we can't follow more than normally 5, and sometimes we stretch to 6, is that we don't have the budget to do that. He says, that's something I've talked about every single season. We just don't have the budget. We don't even have the budget to follow 6. But we stretch and we figure it out. So there's absolutely no way we could do it with 7. This is what we told Christine and Vic. We love you. We want to follow you. We want to be back with you in Ohio. You guys have been on your own amazing romantic bubble, your romantic island this whole time. Because Vic and Christine did not have any number 2s, and because apparently they don't have the budget to follow more than 5, maybe 6 couples, that is the reason why they didn't get to go to Mexico. This is what creator Chris Colin said. Part of what people do when they go to Mexico is they resolve unresolved threads. That's part of the point of going to Mexico and seeing all the others. And Vic and Christine really didn't have any of those unresolved threads. So they were the ones that we picked to go on the trip by themselves. And he also talks about how Breezy, all of her top 4 contenders were in other couples that were going to Mexico. So those are the things that they prioritize, intermixing and intermingling the people that had connections in the pods that did not end up together. I will say it again. I've said it, I think, 3 times. Justice for Vic and Christine, because I think they're the only couple of 2 couples that will end up getting married. Personally, I think Amber and Jordan are going to get married. I think Vic and Christine are going to get married. So it's almost like, what would have happened if they didn't tell them, hey, can you shoot some stuff on your own? What would have happened? Which I did see that as an internet theory. I saw it on one of the, it was like a Facebook post or something that said, here's my theory. I think that all these couples get to the end, but either maybe nobody gets married or there's only one couple and it's kind of like a lackluster finale, which I feel like there has been seasons in the past where only one couple has gotten engaged. Or maybe there was a time where they thought nobody was going to get married, but then they see Vic and Christine and are like, oh, they're solid. We didn't want to follow them because they didn't have any drama surrounding their relationship. So let's go back, pick up some scenes. Let's go tape a sit down with Christine's mom. Was it her mom or was it her grandma? I don't know. You guys get it. Basically recreate what they did by themselves to include in the show because, like, Breezy and Connor aren't getting married. Emma and Mike aren't getting married. Ashley and Alex aren't getting married. So I'm just upset about that. But, if we're looking for a silver lining, it's that they are including Vic and Christine because, like you said, only 5, sometimes 6. They're technically 7 this season. So there are times in Love is Blind where people get engaged and go through the whole thing and they get 0 screen time. So I don't know. I still don't like it. All right, for this week's final thoughts, I want to get into this week's episode of Summer House, which I have been doing recaps on the Patreon, although you pick every single week what episode we recap, whether it's The Traitors or Love is Blind or what have you. So if you're not a Lilas girly, click the link in the description and join Lilas Plus. I'm not going to recap the whole episode. I'm just going to talk about one moment in particular, and that is the whole Sierra West Jesse debacle that happened this week. First of all, a nice reprieve from the Kyle and Amanda drama because it was slowly starting to suck the life out of the room, suck the life out of the show, which I understand. I want the show to be as authentic as possible, but I was thinking, if we continue on this train of constant negativity between Amanda and Kyle, is it going to be every single episode? You know what I mean? I don't know if I can do it. But thankfully, Jesse is taking one for the team this week, and he is messy Jesse, causing some chaos when it comes to Sierra. So we get this moment in the bedroom. All the boys are there, KJ, Ben, Jesse, and West. And Jesse says to West, hey, do you mind if I make out with Sierra? And West says, is that in the works? And KJ and Ben are kind of like, wait, what? What did he just say? And Jesse's like, I don't know. It just might be fun. If we ever have too much to drink and one thing leads to another, it might be fun. West said whatever and also didn't say a lot more, but then the boys talked about it later on in the night when they came back home, and Ben and KJ and West were all talking about how weird it was that Jesse said that, which, is it weird? Yes. Do I also think that Jesse has some secret feelings for Sierra? Also, yes. I don't know if this is true, but a long time ago, I did read something in college that said, this might be so messed up, you guys, just whatever. It said, if you're a female, if you ask any single one of your guy friends, hey, would you date me? They will say yes. If you're single, right? So I did it. I did it back in college. I had a best guy friend. I went up to him. I'm like, hey, if I wanted to date you, would you date me? And he was like, probably. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I'm like, do you like me? And he's like, I don't think so. So who really knows? Who really knows? But I also feel like Jesse, based on everything that he's saying in these confessionals, he is yearning for a relationship. We see earlier in the episode, he says, I'm ready to settle down. West is not. And sometimes I think when you are single and you've been single for a long time and you really want a relationship, you start looking at the people around you as if did I miss something with this person? Could it be this person? And it seems like Jesse and Sierra are super close. I feel like, they're always very open and honest with each other in conversation. They're cuddling in the bed together, right? So they do have a very close friendship. So sometimes those wires get crossed and sometimes it's hard to navigate. Do I actually like this person or am I just lonely and they're here? But who wouldn't like Sierra? Hello, she is like an angel on earth. So then, when the boys come back and they're talking about it in the kitchen, everybody says that it's weird. But the next day, West positions it to Jesse as if it was only KJ and Ben saying that it's weird. They're laying in this little floaty together. And Wes is like, what was that about? Is it jokey? And Jesse doesn't initially say that it was meant to be a joke. He keeps saying it's for fun. And then Wes is like, it's jokey, which based on the preview for next week, Sierra does bring up like, oh, so it's just a joke to you? I'm just a joke to you? Like, I don't understand. So I feel like that also is where some wires get crossed. But West he's not entirely forthcoming about the fact that it wasn't just KJ and Ben that thought it was weird. It was also West who thought it was weird. He does say, if anybody else were in my position, they would call you a weirdo for asking me that. And then Jesse says, well, it does make it weirder that you dated her, but it's not going to stop me, which I have a lot of complex thoughts about this, to be completely honest with you, because if I'm West, I'm feeling like, what? What did you just say to me? There's no way, right? Which I feel like is a lot of our initial reactions. Like, it's breaking bro code. Obviously, there's a history between Wes and Sierra. The issue that I have with Wes' reaction here, though, is that he had his chance and he blew it. And I know I, along with many of us, are out here rooting for Sierra and Wes to give it another go this past summer, this season 10. But it's like, my opinion is that if Sierra wanted to do it, if she wanted to kiss Jesse, she should be able to do it, and there should be absolutely no drama surrounding it in the house coming from West, KJ, or Ben. That's just my personal opinion. I'm going to be honest with you, because they say, that was your girlfriend, West. It was not. It was not. Yes, essentially they were, right? They were hanging out together after filming, going to weddings together. But at the end of the day, it was West and his inability to commit to Sierra that ended that relationship. So the problem with the situation is that it's Jesse in the way that he's going about it. If the roles were reversed and it was Sierra and she was wanting to see if there was a connection with Jesse, I feel like she should be able to do so with her head held high. Do I think that that's going to happen? No. But also, a lot of people are saying, maybe this is what West needed to kind of push him. We know that their relationship is going to progress this season, Wes and Sierra. What that looks like, I don't really know. But what leads to that forehead kiss moment? What leads to the, yeah, I miss you moment? The other thing that is really a question in my mind right now is, I think the word best friend gets thrown around pretty loosely in these reality TV worlds. I want to know if Jesse and Wes are really best friends. I know they came onto the show together. I know they were thick as thieves season 1. But to be completely honest with you, have we seen them together much on season 10? Do we ever see them hanging out together outside of the show, like on a random day out in New York City? Not to my knowledge. So again, is that terminology also being used to sway the outcome in one favor or another? And also, it reminds me of when Lexi Wood said to everybody that Jesse doesn't really like West, that he's maybe a little bit jealous of West. And at first in the moment, I thought, okay, well, it's just about popularity on the show because everybody loves West. Is it deeper? And does it have to do with Sierra? Ruh-roh, we're getting deep. We're getting the messy Jesse. The waters are getting muddy. And I don't know. When I look at Jesse and how he treats Sierra and how he acts around her, I feel like he really actually does have feelings for her. I don't know. I don't know. But I love Summer House. so much. All right, you guys, thanks again for tuning into this week's episode of MPT. If you want more Bravo headlines, pop culture, entertainment, TV recaps, make sure that you subscribe to Lila's Plus on Patreon. The link is in the show notes below. Leave a 5-star boop boop, a little love you like a sis review because you know I do. We'll see you next week. And as always, love you like a sis.